When personal finance connects you to both your funds and the stuff that matters, that's money. And that's Cash App. Know what else is money?
Using Cash App to request that $50 your cousin owes you.
Actually, finally, getting that $50.
Easily divvying up those pizza and wing checks before your boys have a chance to slip out.
Tipping the delivery guy when you're flat out of cash.
Hearing an awesome musician on the train home and tipping their cash tag.
Sending everyone in your family group chat $1 just because.
Splitting the cost of tickets to that really expensive sporting event you were afraid you were going to have to foot the bill for.
Watching your paycheck grow without you lifting a finger.
Collecting all that money for your fantasy football winnings.
Or at least easily shelling out that money for your fantasy football dues.
Getting paid to read a wonderful ad script from my good friends at Cash App.
Sending, spending, saving, splitting, tipping, donating, gifting, or just typing numbers, all with the #1 finance app in the App Store. That's money. That's Cash App.
Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today to create your own cash tag.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson from the Superdome after that game. Yeah, that thing. Really, I don't know how many more times you can use disappointing or just what it was, but this was like, I get last week against the Packers was bad. It was like rock bottom, but this one was kind of just, we were going to go out and see what happens, and it's like you cram the night before a test and you tried to wing it. That's kind of what I feel like we saw on the field today.
Yeah, they were coming off a short week, right? So there is a little bit to that in terms of the opportunity, or the idea of like what was the preparation like and all these other things. I think we've heard a lot from a couple of different players after the game. We talked about preparation being a thing, not necessarily from the coaching side of it all, but just individual preparation for certain players and things like that. One call to action about if you're out there playing for yourself and not playing for the guy next to you, then what are you really doing? And like, if that's the way that this season is going to end, is with those types of challenges being made in week 17, then this was kind of dead in the water before it ever even got the opportunity to start. And that's certainly what this team looked like today.
Yeah, and I think if you're a fan, look, you kind of knew this, that change is needed, right?
Yeah.
Overhaul, rebuild, retool, it doesn't matter. But if I'm the Saints and I'm in their front office and I'm looking at this product on the field, you can no longer hide behind this. This is proof that you have got to do something different. You cannot go with the continuity, the familiarity. You can't do that because you don't even have the talent to support it right now at this point in this juncture. Like, I think there's major question marks on this team. And I get it. The injuries have been a problem. But defensively, you don't have injuries. There's no excuse for the defense playing as bad as they are. Like, they're bad. And whether it's a scheme or something else, they just don't have what it takes to stack up. I mean, Amir Abdullah had a career-high 94 rushing yards in 2017. He's almost 32. He had 115 today on 20 carries. That is just the epitome of where the Saints defense has just fallen from grace. And, they shoot themselves in the foot, and then you have a chance to take a pick, and then another 90-plus yard play drive. I mean, this is about as defeated of an effort, I think, as I've seen today.
Yeah, major missed opportunities throughout this one. You had a 3-and-out to start on defense.
Yeah,
you had a 3-and-out on a third down sack by Brian Brzee. That ends up being nullified, I guess, by an offsides penalty by Carl Granderson. That then turns into a 17-play field goal drive, the first from the Raiders on the road since 2001, according to our good friend Drew, the stats expert, at Talent Stats on your favorite social media, by the way. But like, it's just one of those things. And then you saw the missed opportunities, the drops, penalties. I mean, it was all there. Like, just the same thing that we saw back from Dennis Allen's days.
Yeah.
And I'm talking 2022, 2023, and earlier on this season. And look, this is the second time this year that the Saints have lost to the worst team in the NFL. right? They lost to the Carolina Panthers when they were the worst team in the NFL. That led to Dennis Allen being fired. And then here you've got a loss to the Las Vegas Raiders, who were considered one of the worst teams in the NFL, 3-12 team that walked in here and won 25-10 comfortably.
Yeah.
In this matchup. That's just one of those things where I completely agree with you. There's no way that this team, this organization can look at this performance and couple it with last week's performance against Green Bay. You couldn't compete at the top of the NFL. You also can't compete at the bottom of the NFL. So what are you doing? You've got to get to a point here. I'm with you. I get all the injuries and stuff like that. I understand. Sure. But to your point, Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, that's all you were missing on defense. Yeah. And what have you heard over and over again for years now about Marshawn Lattimore and the cornerback position? Well, they can play without those guys. They've figured out how to win without those guys. That's just not the truth anymore.
Yeah, it's a sobering reality, I think. And just to put this in perspective, the Raiders had the last rushing attack in the league. 77 yards a game is what they came in here. And they put up a $150, I think is what it was, something like that. 300 yards, just over 300 yards average a game on offense, which is 28th in the NFL. The Saints gave up over 350. I mean, I think it's 400 actually is what it is. Yeah, I'm selling them short, right? But there is no credit for trying anything here. But again, that just puts it in perspective how bad this defense was. And again, it sucks. But the tackling, the coverage, the getting after the quarterback, the shoot yourselves in the foot. I mean, it's a common theme, and it didn't happen on just one side of the ball. It happened on both sides of the ball. But again, I think when you take a look at this season, I've been more disappointed in the way this defense is played than I have in the offense. Like, don't get me wrong, Clint Kubiak, the offensive play calling, all this stuff has not come together like we saw in the first 2 weeks and like what we saw in training camp and in preseason, all this other stuff. But I think I've got to be more disappointed in the way this defense has played.
Yeah, because, I mean, you look at even where the team was at its worst over the course of the past couple of years, it was always the defense that kept them in games and things like that. And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing them now only having won 5 games this season and probably only winning 5 games this season, right? I mean, are they going to go to Tampa against Baker Mayfield, who just threw, how many touchdowns? 5? 5 touchdowns and actually and turn around and win? Like, I can't see that happening. I think you go to Tampa next week, and if Alvin Kamara's on the field, you force feed him, you get him 50 yards, you get him off the field, get him 1,000-yard season, and then survive to the end. And I think that's what you're looking at doing. Not only was Las Vegas the last team in total rushing yards as well as rushing yards per game, they were last in rushing per attempt as well. The Saints gave up 4.1 per attempt. That includes, though, a couple of negative runs in some advantageous or disadvantageous situations for the Raiders. So even beyond that, and a couple of, I think they had some kneel downs as well. But and on top of all that, you give up 150 plus, as you mentioned, on the ground. Like, this is the NFL's worst rushing defense. Yeah. This is the NFL's worst rushing defense. Like, when you go out there and you give up this kind of a game to the worst rushing offense, you can only be one thing at that point. And it's unfortunate because, again, for the most part, the Saints have only gotten healthier on the defensive side. And I don't understand the decision. No John Ridgeway, no Christian Boyd, 2 guys that could be big-time run pluggers for you in the middle of the defense. Do they just not know the defense that much? Yeah. Or is that just an ill-advised decision to not have those guys on the field? That's not for you to answer. That's for the New Orleans Saints to answer. But, man, like, what an oversight if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, coming into this game, we knew on paper the Raiders were an inferior opponent. But after the way this played out, I'm not so sure that the better team was, the Saints are the better team. It's just the way they look. I mean, this is a game where I'm not going to say it saves Antonio Pierce's job by any means, but they look like a team that was hungry. They look like a team that was like, okay, we don't have anything to play for necessarily except our head coach, which was the case when Darren Rizzi took over. I mean, what happened to that team that took the field against the Falcons? I think that's also what's been disappointing is that team that was so hungry, thought that they could come in here and compete, and then they get out of the playoff mix after, they went into that Packers game and did it. And today was just kind of like, we're just going to check the boxes. And I think I'm with you. When you're looking at a run defense, you don't have 2 defensive tackles dressed. And whether the plan was to put Peyton Turner inside or Tano inside, it just didn't work. Right. And that's the thing is I wanted to see more of Christian Boyd. They saw a lot more of some of the players that they wanted to see, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the one. They got to see a little bit more Isaiah Stallbird on special teams and such. I mean, you got to see a little bit more of good and bad. The offensive line, there was some real problems there. Obviously, I thought Spencer Rattler handled himself extremely well in the first half. I thought he looked really comfortable there, and which I thought was going to be a big thing for him. Get him comfortable early. I think that pass he made to Kevin Austin Jr. was just one of the best ones he did. The play from the start, that read option and going out for 28 yards. I mean, it looked good for a half, but this team, as it's proven, cannot play fourth quarters of football.
Yeah, they went from averaging 9.7 yards per attempt in the first half, John, to averaging 1.2 in the second quarter. I think they gained like 13 yards. Oh, so sorry, in the third quarter. My apologies. They gained like 13 yards on 11 plays in the third quarter. Just not a good sense of output, not a good sense of production, and certainly not a good sense of competition by the time that it was all said and done either, or at least no indicate. That's what the scoreboard indicates. Let me say it that way. I will say that it felt like players played and gave effort all the way through. Sure. The issue is that you're giving effort and you're not getting results. And so something's missing somewhere else. And so whether it's the scheme, whether it's the coaching, whether it's the ability or inability, whatever it might be, I don't know. But it was not the display that the New Orleans Saints needed to have. And while Antonio Pierce might have saved his job today, I don't know if Darren Rizzi, I could certainly say Darren Rizzi did not further his side when it comes to potentially landing a long-term job.
No, I'm with you. I think this was a game where if you would have won this one and then beat the Bucs in the finale, then I think you got some more serious consideration here. But let's just face it. I mean, this was a game that they needed to win in that aspect, especially for Rizzi. And again, he's going to get an interview. He's going to get an interview. Yeah. That's just how it's going to be. But when you look at the team's direction and the way that they've been under Rizzi these last several games, I think the first several games were nice to see the effort and kind of change it up. And I like the aggressive decisions and going for two to try to win the game. If you beat the Commanders, you beat the Rams, then there's no telling where the season would have ended up. But that's the Saints in a nutshell. The what if, this could have been different and all that. But, look, he's going to land on his feet somewhere. I expect him to get some head coaching looks in this cycle, but I just don't think that's going to be the Saints. And for all intents and purposes, we've said this plenty on our show. He's going to end up being somewhere else next year because they're going to put a new head coach in, and you just don't stick around when that's the case.
Yeah, you don't leave your ex for another partner and then say, stay here and help clean the house. You don't do that. You know what I mean? Darren Rizzi is going to be somewhere else. Yeah. And he's going to be the highest paid special teams coordinator. Sure. He's going to be an assistant head coach wherever he ends up. That's not going to go away. And hopefully he gets another opportunity after maybe working with other staffs, or I don't know. I don't know exactly what he needs, but whatever it is, I hope that he gets it because he certainly deserves it. Great dude. And he has been an awesome coach in terms of getting everybody together, being a culture builder, and was handed an adverse situation. Yeah. Just unfortunately has not been able to. And this is the trial of the interim head coach. You have to be handed an adverse situation and you have to turn it into gold. Yep. And that's a high task. That's a big task. And it's not an easy one to pass. And Darren Rizzi will be added to the list of interim head coaches, to not necessarily pass that test. It's not a shot at him because he did about as good as you can do without being, Jason Garrett. And I would say that he's one of the better interim head coaches that we've seen. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it's probably not going to go beyond that.
Yeah, there is no almost there. You know what I mean? I mean, he was given a crappy hand to begin with. And look, I understand it. I think in fairness to him that he did make some good culture changes for the Saints that should have been in place long ago. You know what I mean?
And activation periods.
Activation period, up. Changing the way they do practice, how they do practice, the schedule. I mean, the familiarity, the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and over again. The Saints were doing the same thing over and over and over again, thinking that they could just capture some of this past glory, and they just haven't been able to. And so, again, I don't know how it's going to go in the offseason, but I would expect this to, I don't want to say a clean house, like everybody top to bottom, but I expect a new defensive staff almost top to bottom. It's going to be tough not to have some of those pieces there. I expect, offense. I think there's a chance Clint Kubiak could come back. You know what I mean? I don't know that that's the right answer, but depends on who the head coach is, right? And so, again, you just look at how this has gone for Darren Rizzi. It's been tough. It's been somewhat exciting. They have got some progress there. Players were able to get behind them. But, again, where did that team go? That was so hungry when they took the field against the Falcons. We haven't seen it in the past two games, and it kind of looks like the same thing. But, it's like Scooby-Doo. You pull the mask, it's still Dennis Allen. It's just Darren Rizzi there, and that's not a shot. That's just how they play.
Yeah, and that's the fault of continuity, right? It's the fault of familiarity. If you continue to go back to the same thing and you continue to go back to the familiarity, to the continuity, you might run into the same issues over and over again. It's one of the reasons why I think you and I both agree that going away from familiarity, doing something that makes this team uncomfortable, this organization uncomfortable, is in its best interest this offseason. I think there's a good chance, I'm with you, that Clint Kubiak's back for a second year, but I'd be surprised if he was back in 2026.
Sure.
I think that what we've seen so far from this offense is like the highest of highs followed by nothing else but the lowest of lows. Like, they've had no middle ground. This team has not been able to run the football effectively. Today was certainly an example of that. And when they can't run the football effectively, they've got no counterpunch. Yeah. They have no second punch at all. And every fighter needs a second punch. And we've talked over and over again about how this team believes that it can still compete. That conversation started about competing at the top of the NFL. Then it trickled down to competing within a bad division. And now you're not competing with the worst team on the football field, right? With the worst teams on the football field. And so it's just tough. And remember, they almost dropped the game to the New York Giants as well. It was a blocked field goal that saved the day. And so, I mean, just over and over again, you're kind of like looking at what this team truly is. And my mom always taught me, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And I think we're seeing who the New Orleans Saints are. And hopefully they see now who they are as well and kind of embrace that a little bit and look towards this offseason as a real opportunity to flip things over and start to redo all this. It's not going to be a one-year job,
sure not,
but it's important to get ahead of it as quickly as you can, as we're seeing across the NFL today.
Yeah, and chip away. I mean, that's the thing, is you're not expected to fix this, but embrace that you aren't as good as you think you are. Embrace the fact that you can't even compete in a division with you try to retool the pieces, all this other stuff. And again, just what you were talking about, Kubiak, I mean, this stat, they put up 91 points in the first two games. You'd have to go back and count up the last 6 games, going back to Cleveland, and they have 92 points. That's just where the offense is gone. And so, and since the bye week, I think it was 57 points that they put up. And so, again, there's a lot going on. And I understand no Taysom Hill, no Rashid Shaheed, no Chris Olave, no Eric McCoy, no Lucas Patrick, all these things, no Derek Carr even. But I think the problems go beyond that, obviously. And for New Orleans, this is going to be a tough offseason. I think it can be groomed in the right direction, but I think for fans, the lack of confidence is who's going to be the one that leads this, and can they put them in the right direction, or are they going to lean on familiarity and past habits to try to achieve a same result, which I just don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be very interesting. I think the Saints need to look far and wide. I think you'll see that. I think you're going to see them do their due diligence, kind of cast a wide net. They need to. There is going to be a conversation about which candidates are interested. I think the Saints are going to have to find unique ways to sell themselves, so they should be able to do that. They're not super far away from being out of the salary cap thumb, and so they should be okay in that situation, and they should have money to spend this offseason. So there are building blocks. There are things from the financial standpoint that this team will be able to do as long as they're willing to roll with Derek Carr for another year. I think that's going to be the caveat in terms of having the most available funds to them to be able to do something. And, I think that the next thing beyond that is just looking at where else do you make improvements. You're inherently going to have a new defensive coordinator. Yep. That's going to happen no matter what, because Dennis Allen was your defensive play caller, so you will have that different, and then they'll need to figure things out over the course of the offseason. But, man, it's hard to look at this team right now, beaten, battered, injured, insufficient, whatever it is that you want to say about them. It's all true. And it's all colliding and all collided on the field today for sure. It took a trick play to get a touchdown during a time where the offense was actually working, and then they resorting to the Cedric Wilson double pass again felt really desperate. And for me, that was like amongst the low points of this game for New Orleans. And so I think they need to take that low point. They need to take this low point, and they need to roll from here. How do you improve it from this level? Not how do you improve it from where your team was at its best. Start from here. Look at how you improve.
Yeah, and the thing is, they have an opportunity here, and I get it. If you don't have your top weapons, this is why you have to get the depth right. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Yep. And so you got presumably 6 picks in the top 150. You got to use those on those pieces, and you've got to let the players play. Like, I get it, but being honest with yourself also is, we might go through some struggles with young players. Okay, that's fine. But let them get the experience, let the coaches develop them, let them get better on the field, and then let's see what we got. Because I just don't think we're in this position where it's like, well, the veterans should play and all this other stuff. Like it's got to be, if you're going to go with the youth movement, if you're going to try to inject it, like I don't think they could pull a 2014 where they just say, we're going to get rid of all of our leaders and then we're just going to let all the young guns just try to do it. Like Junior Gillette was a captain. I mean, come on,
right,
in hindsight now, but that was a big messed up situation. And I'm not saying that. They do need to keep some pieces. I think DeMario's back. I'm pretty sure Tyron will be back. Have we seen the last of Cam? I don't think so. Right?
I don't think so either.
I know he wants to play. I think the Saints front office should find a way to make it work. And here's the reality. If they don't keep Cam Jordan, they don't have Chase Young. They don't have Peyton Turner. They don't have Tano Passignon. So they're left with Isaiah Foskey and Carl Granderson. That's just not going to work. So they're going to make something happen, I feel like. But, use that leadership to help develop the next wave, make Alvin a captain again next year, and just try to salvage what you can and make what you can of next season, but do it with a coach that's going to support you and is going to have that direction, and then just see where the chips are going to fall, because they're not going to make the playoffs next year. We'd be lucky to see them get 7 games. Like, this is going to be another thing where they probably finish 3rd in the division, maybe 4th in the division. I think Carolina can jump them next year. I feel like they can if they can get what they need out of Bryce Young and some of that young talent that they have. But for New Orleans, I think a lot of people can see the answers. I just don't know if the Saints can see the answers themselves.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because the ego gets in the way, right? We made these decisions. They're the wrong decisions, or they turned out to not be as good of decisions as we thought they were. We have to admit that before, there's a lot of that self-negotiation that has to happen. Will this team do that? We don't know. A lot of NFL teams don't, if we're being honest. This isn't a specific Saints thing. This is ego in the NFL exists. Ego in the NBA very much exists. I think you can see it there more than anywhere else. But I do think that that's true. On Cam Jordan, I do want to say there were a lot of signs in this game that pointed to this potentially being his last game. Yeah. Entire family had a humongous Jordan contingent here. He was the player on the game day program. He led the Who Dat chant. He did the what do you call it? The coin toss. Yeah. The Saints Twitter profile was tweeting about him all throughout the game, all leading up and stuff like that. But we talked to him after the game, and he made it very clear that if it's his last season in New Orleans, it's because the Saints made that decision, not his. I agree. Yeah, and what he said was, as long as my until my love runs dry, or until the Saints tell me otherwise, I'm here. So I don't expect Cam Jordan to be going anywhere, despite all the signs that it might have looked like in this game, unless the New Orleans Saints make the decision, which is possible with the new head coach on the way, unless the Saints make the decision to move on from him. I
think it could be a Calais Campbell situation. Let him play, and then if it gets to the end and you're just not there and Cam wants to go try to chase a ring with somebody, let him go do it. But at the same time, I feel like he's somebody that needs to be in this room to help develop some more of these guys, help lead these guys. And again, I think he could still be effective. He's proven that. I mean, he picked up another sack today on Aidan O'Connell. And so, again, it's so bizarre the fact that he went from 10 snaps to playing like he was a guy that was still a little bit young. Had a lot left in the tank, clearly. And I still think Cam Jordan has a lot left in the tank. But, that's one of the many decisions that the Saints are going to have to make in this offseason, which the season may be coming to an end. But, man, it's just getting started for us. This is going to be – I would say exciting, but this is going to be a lot of information to look at and cover as we get closer to that. And I'm excited about it. The end result may not be exciting, but at least it's cool to say, okay, they're going to get a new head coach. They're probably going to get a new staff in a lot of areas. They're going to make these roster decisions. I'm curious to see what their priorities are going to be, because I think the glaring priorities are the trenches. I think they needed to get a couple of more playmakers out there. They got to fix the secondary in some aspects. You got to figure out what you're going to do with Ryan Ramczyk's situation. I think some of this has proven, just going off on a tangent, that you got to bring Paulson Adebo back.
Good point. Good call. Good call.
And not that Alante and Kool-Aid can't be the guys, but I think with his unfortunate injury, a 1-year deal, a fair market value for him, I think you've got to bring him back in here, because they've missed Paulson Adebo a lot. And between him and Marshawn Lattimore, I just don't think you've seen the future of the Saints cornerback room be what it needs to be.
Yeah, and I think it's challenging. I don't think that Alante Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry have been in the best situation either, right? Yeah. Alante Taylor has been a guy that they've focused him in the slot. No, don't pay attention to the outside. You're in the slot. Don't talk about the outside. You're in the slot. And then they put him back on the outside. and they trade away the top guy to get that done, and then they put him back out there and everything. Not an advantageous situation. Kool-Aid McKinstry, rookie season, getting thrown out there to be a starter outside opposite that guy that's being, moved around and shifted and all this stuff. Just like, it's not an advantageous system for any or situation for anybody. And so, like, one of the things that would be great is if the Saints did hire Aaron Glenn, you get that secondary focus right back at head coach. You get that secondary focus right back at defensive coordinator. He helps to make that secondary better. He was good here in New Orleans with that as well. So I think that that's one of the places where you can see some improvement. But I completely agree that bringing Paulson and Debo back and having 3 answers as opposed to 2 is going to be a much, much better situation for New Orleans. And they should continue to invest in the position as well. I think tight end's a spot where they need to invest too. Totally. Just the drop passes today and really over the course of the past couple of weeks have been like a glaring issue for this team, and that's not necessarily a coaching thing. That's an individual player. Can you come down with a football thing? And I think the Saints have really struggled to do that at that position outside of Foster Moreau, who's been, outside of Alvin Kamara, the most consistent offensive weapon so far this season. So I think that's a place where the Saints also need to look at upgrading. And so you look at the head coach spot, defensive coordinator, potentially offensive coordinator, and then every position on this team could use attention. And is going to have a story. It is going to be, I'll use the word, it is going to be an exciting offseason. And even if it doesn't turn into anything by the end of 2025 season, it's going to be an exciting, intriguing, eventful offseason. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And we'll cover it all the way here. We'll have it.
And the building blocks, I think that's the biggest thing. It's building blocks. Just start somewhere. And you mentioned tight end. This is why I think I had the Brock Bowers crush too and all these other things. And it wasn't just him. Like, there was a lot of tight ends in this draft class that I very special. I think over the past several years, they've had some really special tight ends, but Dallin Holker can't see the field at all. You know what I mean? Like, it's bizarre, but you're right. We'll be here to cover it. And I don't think there's anything else to say about beating this dead horse. Without getting into future stuff, it's been crazy. Last game of the Superdome, it's bittersweet, I guess, is what, I don't even know if I call it bittersweet.
I think it is.
Like crap. I don't know.
I think it is. I think it's cool. It's cool to be here. You know what I mean? We're the last ones here. Ain't nobody else here. Yeah. And so, like, it's a cool thing. Like, this
getting the field ready for the Sugar Bowl. Also, they're like, I can't wait till these guys stop. You know what I mean? That's what they're thinking. So, yeah, definitely. So, look, a lot of stuff coming. Be sure to tune in to Locked In with Ross and make sure you check up all of his episodes as well as his writing on LouisianaSports.net. Go to Saints News Network. Again, I'm working on a doozy of a piece talking about what I think the Saints should do from top to bottom, from offseason moves to restructures to everything. I am getting closer to finishing that. It's going to be a fun. And again, my coach pick is anybody's talking about. So it'll be fun. I'll have fun trying to sell that one. But that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our last show, 2024. Thanks for hanging with us. And don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button. And you're going to have more Second and Saints in your face, whether you want it or not. It's coming. So, on behalf of Ross Jackson, John Hendricks signing out.
Love you.
Over the last 75 years, over 10,000 chemicals have been introduced to our food supply. Yet the EU only allows 300 food additives. But at Thrive Market, we bring our members the highest quality brands and restrict more than 1,000 ingredients found at conventional grocery stores. Making the switch is easy with our Healthy Swaps scanner, which finds better versions of all your favorite pantry, snacking, and home essentials without the added junk, dyes, and fillers. Plus, it's all delivered straight to your door. So if you're looking to shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health, go to thrivemarket.com/podcast and you'll get 30% off your first order and a free gift.